Hey guys, today I want to talk about 9 signs that you can look for or examine in yourself to see if reparenting might be something that could help you on your healing journey. Now, I'm going to be totally honest. When I was on my own healing journey and I was told that reparenting could help, I kind of was like, I gotta sneeze. Always gotta sneeze when I'm recording. I never sneeze, but I always sneeze when I'm recording. I guess I kind of viewed it as something like very new agey. I didn't think it would really help. So I didn't start applying it, even though I heard about it, even though I was told that it would be helpful. I didn't start applying it until I was staying stuck. And that's the thing with narcissistic abuse is like there's so much to learn to work through the side effects of Cptsd, the side effects of the emotional manipulation, that being stuck is something that you struggle with. So when I did finally learn about self-parenting and how to do it effectively in my own life, because it's one thing to read about it and hear that it can help, and it's a whole nother thing to understand how to take that information and make it personal and how to use it to help you to transform your life. Okay, so when I did that and I saw the benefits, that's when I really realized just how important this tool is for anyone that is overcoming narcissistic abuse or overcoming childhood trauma or complex PTSD. Okay, so with that in mind, let's dive into those 9 things. And for those that don't know me, my name is Michele. I'm a life and relationship coach. I specialize in helping people overcome narcissistic abuse and complex PTSD. I'm the founder of the Thriver School of Transformation, which, by the way, it's a new month. It's November. And for the month of November, we're going to take the whole month. And the theme of the month is all about how to do self-parenting. So if you want more in-depth back and forth on this topic, make sure you check out this link, which will give you 7 days free. And then if you want to stay on with us, you are more than welcome. Okay, so let's jump into those 9 things. Number 1 is if you grew up in a chaotic home in childhood. And chaotic can mean verbally abusive, emotionally manipulative, but it can also mean emotionally absent. Okay, either extreme is unhealthy, and there's a whole lot in the middle. But the basics to really kind of evaluate if you grew up in a chaotic household is to ask yourself, did I feel safe in my childhood? And the other question you might want to ask yourself is, did I have to deny parts of myself just to make peace? And denying parts of yourself could look like hiding your feelings, stifling feelings because you weren't allowed to have them, not being allowed to engage in things that you're passionate about. And if you find yourself still struggling with those behaviors where you're denying parts of yourself, whether it's in friendships or in romantic relationships, or even with your family, if you're an adult child of narcissistic parents, if you're still kind of toning yourself down to appease them, that's a sign that you can use some reparenting. Number 2 is an inability to set boundaries. Now, boundaries can be hard for people in general, okay, not just people that had narcissistic parents or childhood trauma due to toxic parenting. They can be challenging, but there's a difference between something being hard and uncomfortable and trying to do a behavior that literally throws you into an emotional flashback where you feel like a child and you're scared and you have the thoughts of a child, like, if I put down this boundary, something bad is going to happen, or I'm not safe. And there's this fear, almost like your survival is on the line. That's another sign that you can use reparenting. Number 3 is you're very dependent on external validation. Rather than being able to see yourself as you are, right? You're not able to hold on to your self-image, your view of yourself, unless somebody outside of you kind of gives their stamp of approval that, yes, that's who you are. So let's say you dress up and, you want to go out and you think you look good and you're like, oh, I look really nice. But then you have to ask, do I look okay? And if that person, especially if that person is toxic, they're going to say no, right? They're going to do something to make you feel inadequate. If they do that, which is wrong, which is rude, which is unloving, but if because they're like that, you're unable to hold on to your own view of yourself. And if you're really hypervigilant as to how people see you, if you're really hypervigilant as to what they think of you, okay, kind of goes along with that. And it's a very people-pleasing way of being. And if you think about it, in childhood, that's a coping skill. A child will become a people pleaser because they have to, right? Because they are dependent on the caregivers that are rejecting them and that are hurting them and making them feel unsafe. They're dependent on them at the same time. And so the brain will go into these coping skills to help you to handle that overwhelming situation, and people pleasing is one of them. And while it has its benefits in childhood, right, because it helps you to appease a very volatile and unpredictable person that you need in your life, at the same time, in adulthood, it keeps you from really allowing yourself to be an authentic and autonomous person. You struggle with self-care. You make sure everyone else's needs are taken care of. You're always thinking about what you can do for others in your family, even with your friends. You probably give way more than you ever receive back. And you don't really take care of yourself, not the way you should. And you definitely don't take care of yourself with the same loving, compassionate ways that you take care of others. You feel powerless, as if you have no control over your life. It's almost like you feel like you're always reacting to life, reacting to what's going on, and things are always happening to you. Or that's how it feels. It feels like things are always happening to you and you just can't keep up, and you just can't seem to feel like you're in the driver's seat of your life. And so it's almost like you're living life on autopilot, because when you've grown up where you had to be in fight or flight all the time, where you had to be in survival mode all the time, that's how it is. When you're in survival mode, you can't create the life that you want. Your brain is hardwired to look at what's going on and what it needs to do to keep you safe. So if you feel like you're stuck in that, again, that's a coping strategy from childhood that's now maladaptive in your adult life. And those coping strategies don't just go away simply because you're no longer around the toxic people that created those strategies or caused you to have those strategies. You actually have to actively do things to stop those strategies from coming up in your life now and kind of taking over and keeping you in those old coping skills that aren't functioning for you right now. Having an opinion and making decisions feels unnatural and very overwhelming. So you prefer, or you feel more comfortable being told what to do. You just want people to tell you what to do because there's this intense feeling or impulse that you can't trust yourself. And along with that, you just don't feel connected to yourself. So there's a lack of self-identity, a lack of self-connection. And if you feel like a personal decision that you're about to make is going to make somebody else upset, it's almost like you can't hold on to why you want to make that decision. You'll cancel out what you want to do because you think that you have to make that person happy, even if it comes at the expense of self. Another sign is if you struggle with a very harsh inner critic. If you were to listen to the way you talk to yourself, and let's say you're not even aware of it at the moment. And I'm going to be honest, at one time in my life, I wasn't aware of it. And if somebody said, Michele, are you speaking to yourself harshly? I would have been like, no, why would I do that? And then I started listening to what was going on in the confinements of my mind. And I was in shock at how cruel I was, how little compassion I had, how I pushed and shoved myself forward with no emotional support. I didn't support myself emotionally. I kicked myself when I was down. And if I were to evaluate, where did that come from? Well, that came from certain behaviors outside of myself that I had now internalized. And that's the thing. Okay, so anyone that feels resistance to self-parenting, anyone that feels like self-parenting isn't helpful, I want you to know that you are always parenting yourself, whether you realize it or not. The difference is that if you're not aware and you're kind of unconscious about it, you are parenting yourself the way you were parented. And if you had toxic and manipulative parents, who wants to stay stuck in that? Okay, so that's another sign. Your inner dialogue. If you don't know the things you say to yourself and how you show up for yourself, after this video, make it a goal to start listening and paying attention. 8 is you have difficulty trusting. And it's understandable, because if you couldn't trust your caregivers, the people who your life depended on, the people who, if no one else, right, should have your back, if they didn't, then it's really hard to trust anybody else. If narcissistic parents weren't reliable, if they used emotional entrapment, if they played emotional games, if they used emotional blackmail, psychological manipulation, and or if their words didn't match their actions, then you couldn't trust your parents. If they dismissed your emotions, if they dismissed your pain, if they treated your struggles or your needs as a burden, if they never believed you when you were being honest and sincere, then you weren't allowed to have your own reality. They encouraged you and gaslit you to ignore your reality in favor of their comfort. And when you've grown up with that, it's hard to trust anybody. Again, the brain as a coping skill gets stuck in hypervigilance, and everything somebody says or does, it's trying to look for any kind of similarity to the danger that you had when you were growing up. And that hypervigilance can feel like it's turned on 24/7 and you can't seem to find the off button. And the biggest sign, not that I think all of them are important, but the biggest sign, especially if you find yourself doing this, would you want to look into reparenting? And that's if you find yourself continually repeating toxic relationships. They could be with friends, they could be in work environments, they could be with a significant other. If you just, no matter what you're doing, no matter how much you're learning about toxic people and red flags and all of that information, despite that, if you find yourself continuing in the same pattern of relationships, you have to understand that that's the way the brain works. Until the wounds are healed, there are beliefs and thought patterns that are designed to continue helping you to create your reality. Your brain is a reality making machine, so to speak. Okay. And if your reality is full of limiting beliefs, it's just going to keep playing over and over until you heal the wounds that are feeding that reality. And that's when your life will change. And that's when things will shift. Your friendships will shift. Your relationships will shift. How you feel about yourself will shift. But you do have to do the inner work. You do have to learn how to reparent and how to do it in such a way that it creates lasting change in your life. There's a ton of information online. You can look up and find what works for you. If you want to join us for the month of November, we're going to dissect reparenting and work through different strategies and tools together that can help you. So remember, here's the link for the School of Transformation.